Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my prediction video for tomorrow's Divisional Round matchup against the New Orleans Saints. And, I've been all over this week on this game. Early in the week, I was like, there's no way we can win this game. The Saints are unbeatable at home. Then I was, thinking, hey, listen, the Eagles got trounced down there. They're going to use that as motivation. They ran the score up on us. And then I come back to, Drew Brees and Sean Payton have never lost at home in a playoff game. And, so I've been all over the place on this game. There's stats that can go both ways for both teams in terms of, who could potentially win this game. So really, like I said, I've been all over the place on this game, really up until I was making my final notes on this game just before I started the video. Did not know even who I was going to pick to win the game. But let's go ahead and break it down and then look at the matchup. And when we're looking at our offense against their defense, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to score. What happened in the game when we played them before, I think, was an aberration. Both in terms of, our play against them and their play against us. I think it just was one of those games that sort of got out of hand and ended up being a complete joke. One of the things that people have asked me this week, whenever someone's asked me, what do you think about the game this week? My standard response is, well, we're not going to lose by 41 points this time. And I do believe that. I think that we're going to be able to score points against their defense. Their defense is suspect across the board. Specifically, if you look at the numbers, the only number that looks good is their running defense, and I still think that that's, a fake stat. I think it's really a misleading stat when you really think about it. The Saints have been playing with a lot of leads this year, and as a result, teams have had to abandon the run. Plus, the Saints' passing defense is not great. So you put all that together, and people aren't going to try to run against you because your passing defense isn't that good, and the fact that lots of times they're trying to play catch-up against you, so they're going to have to pass the ball against you. That's going to lead to the fact that they're ranked 6th in the league in rushing defense. Now, interestingly enough, they've got 3 losses. Discount the last one, they weren't playing. They were in the same situation we were in. They lost a game early in the season, same situation we were in last year. They lost a game early in the season, and then they lost another game after they had gone on a stretch of winning a lot of games in a row where they were due for a letdown. That's what happened, I still think, against the Cowboys, and that was the second reason why they lost. That was the second game that they lost of the season. But if you look at everything across the board, their defense has struggled at times, especially in pass defense, and that has not improved, and those numbers sort of bear it out. Now, interestingly enough, of course, the Eagles' pass defense is not as great either. Interesting thing being is that the Saints are ranked 29th in pass defense, the Eagles are ranked 30th in pass defense. One interesting stat, though, that really differentiates the two, they're both giving up tons of yards, but the Eagles' pass defense has actually been better when you're looking at opponents' passer rating. That, I think, is an important stat to really look at, because that's really more deals with the efficiency of those yards and not just the amount of the yards. So you can see by those stats right there, the Eagles are sort of smack dab in the middle of the league at 15th in terms of opponents' passer ratings, where the Saints are towards the bottom of the league at 27th. So I think that really, says a lot in terms of the difference of those passing yards. When teams have moved the ball against us, they have not always been as successful turning that into touchdowns, whereas that was not the case against the Saints. They have been able to pass against them, and they have been able to score against them. So the real question, I think, in this game, if the Eagles are going to be able to score points against this defense, the real question is, how can our defense stop their offense? Because their offense is fantastic. There's no getting around it. They've got a first ballot Hall of Famer at quarterbacks. It's a very different kind of game than we played last week, where you were going up against a great defense, but their quarterback really didn't scare you. This is just the opposite. Their quarterback scares you, but their defense really doesn't. They are going to be able to move the ball against our defense, especially our secondary. So I'm going to advocate for something that I usually hate when we do, and that is, I think we've got to play our defensive backs sort of off the receivers, let them make their plays underneath, but really prevent the big plays. I think that's really what we've got to do in this game, and then when you get in the red zone, sort of bear down and hope you can hold them to field goals instead of touchdowns. And I think that's going to be the difference of this game, is the touchdown versus field goal ratio, who's winning that and who's getting the better end of that. And if you want any more proof of that, all you had to do is see the second half of the wildcard game where the Bears started using double moves on Avonte Maddox, and that really ended up hurting us in terms of the deep balls. So if you don't think that Sean Payton and Drew Brees saw that, then you've got to know that they're going to go ahead and try that against Avonte Maddox. He's going to see double moves in this game, and he cannot be near as aggressive as he was trying to be against the Bears, because those long plays that we gave up against the Bears are going to turn into touchdowns against the Saints. But not only that, the Eagles have one of the best red zone defenses in the league, so why not play to that strength then? Go ahead, allow them to move the ball, but when you get into the red zone, hope you can hold them to field goals. And like I said, I think this turns into, when teams are getting into the red zone, who's scoring more touchdowns versus field goals, and I think that could be a big difference. Now, you are taking a chance with that because you're going up against one of the best in the league, and Drew Brees certainly, when they got in the red zone against us, when they played it the first time, was able to completely torch us. But our secondary at that time, even though some of the same guys, they were new playing with each other, so the communication was not there, and the scheme might not have been as well understood by the defensive backs. I think they have a much better grasp on what Jim Schwartz is trying to do on the back end, and I think they've been communicating a lot better. So I think from that end, I think it will be a very different kind of situation of what Drew Brees is going to be facing against our red zone defense now versus what he faced back in November. And about that last game that we played against them, a lot of people for that reason are going to think we've got no shot. And that certainly is concerning, with the way we lost that game, and we lost it so easily against them. But really, I think if you look at it, I look at that game in two ways. Number one, we're playing very different football than we were playing back then, and our secondary is even very different than it was back then. And the Saints, frankly, are playing different football. They're not playing as well as they were playing back then. They've struggled towards the back half of the season. And even though they were winning games, they were sort of struggling in some of those wins. And as a result, I think that the Saints are more beatable than maybe people are thinking. Not only that, but the other thing that you got to love about that game is I think Sean Payton's going to rue the day that he basically ran the score up on us. They were still throwing the ball when they were beating us by over 30 points and calling timeouts. And it just really sort of, watching that game, that was the game where I went up and watched it with my cousin, where we met sort of part way. And so we were joking around a lot because the game was out of hand early. So, we sort of ended up, we were continuing to follow the game, but we weren't watching every play. But if I had been watching that game at home alone, I probably would have really been getting irate at how Sean Payton coached the end of that game. And as a result, I know that the Eagles, I know Doug Peterson is sort of trying to downplay it this week, but I think in the locker room, he's really playing that up and said, this team disrespected you before. We've got to go in and get that respect back and show them why they should never do that to another NFL team. And I think Sean Payton, like I said, is going to rue the day that he did that at the end of that game, because I think the Eagles are going to come loaded for bear. The other thing that factors into all this is, of course, turnovers, and those are things that can always turn, a game around. We can't lose the turnover battle. Of course, I said that last week, and then we ended up losing the turnover battle 2-0, and look what happened. The one difference there being is when we did make the turnovers in that game, they didn't really hurt us in the sense of giving them points. It took points off the board for us. But really, they weren't able, what they usually do, their defense has been very good at scoring themselves. And that did not happen in that game. So the turnovers did not hurt us as much because their offense was struggling and our defense was playing well. We can't do that against the Saints because the Saints will take advantage of turnovers, and you can't give Drew Brees too many opportunities. So we cannot lose the turnover battle in this game. Now, like I said at the top of the video, I've gone both ways on this game, looking at it throughout the week. And, in terms of my prediction, I at one point had even toyed around with the idea of, should we go ahead and should I make two predictions, one with my heart, one with my head? But I've decided I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put one prediction out there. And like I said, I like the fact that the Eagles' red zone defense has been playing well. I think Jim Schwartz will play to that. And he'll go ahead and sort of allow them to move the ball, but make sure that they don't get the big plays on us. And I think this does become a situation of who's scoring touchdowns versus field goals when you get in those situations. So for that reason, I do like the Eagles to win this game. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, though. And like I said, I think the Eagles will end up putting in one more touchdown than the Saints. So my prediction for a score is going to be Eagles 34, Saints 30. Let me know what you think. One thing I will say about this is if this does come down to a situation where the Eagles are down, based on my score, if it's like 30-27 and we've got the ball with under 5 minutes left, I'm going to do what I did last week. Al Michaels made the comment about going on a magic carpet ride with Nick Foles. And of course, if any of you listen to 97.5 and Mike Missinelli, he had been pushing the whole idea of the Steppenwolf song, Magic Carpet Ride. So as soon as Al Michaels said that, I got my phone out and I started playing Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf, and the Eagles marched right down the field and scored a touchdown. So it's just a little extra mojo, hopefully put out there to help the Eagles. And if that happens again at the end of this game, that's what I'm going to do again. And the Eagles hopefully will be able to ride that in and get another late touchdown maybe to win the game, and that being the difference, like I said, a field goal in that situation versus a touchdown, and I think the Eagles will be able to do that. Like I said, maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but I think at this point the Eagles are playing some of the best football in the league. The Saints struggled down the stretch, so I think they are due for an upset. So those are my thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. What's your prediction for this game? Do you think the Eagles have a shot in this thing? Do you think they've got no shot in this thing? Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Obviously, I'll check in after the game, let you know what I think. Until then, fly Eagles fly.